There are 10,000 ways to die in the 41st millennium, yet none of them prepared me for this world. I landed not on a battlefield of fire and ruin, but amid steel towers that scraped the sky, and strange, noisy machines that moved without men. My ceramite armor, polished and battle-worn, glinted under an alien sun. I am a space marine of the Ultramarines chapter, a warrior bred for war against chaos and Xenos alike. Yet here I stood, disoriented, in a city whose people barely looked my way. Or perhaps I sensed they feared me. The humans, soft, fragile, and yet surprisingly resilient, stared. I could feel their confusion, their unease. A few clutched strange objects that emitted light and noise, pointing them at me. I held my bolt pistol low, not out of fear, but as a signal that I meant no immediate hostility. Even in the Imperium, encounters with the untrained are delicate affairs. Here it seemed that same logic applied, only multiplied. The air was thick with a tension that reminded me of hive cities on Macrage, yet this tension carried a different cadence, almost musical, strange in rhythm. I noted the absence of the omnipresent scent of ozone and promethium. The sky above was unusually blue, and the warmth of sunlight felt alien against my armor. My servos hummed softly as I moved, each step deliberate, calculated, training drilled into my bones. I quickly scanned the area with my Auspex implant. No warp signatures detected, yet something in the ambient psychic resonance set my instincts on edge. I adjusted the targeting array on my helmet, scanning the humans again. They moved with caution, but there was intelligence there, a sharpness I rarely observed outside Imperial worlds, perhaps even comparable to the adept minds of our scouts or tech marines. Then they spoke, words in a strange tongue, rising in pitch and urgency. I understood none of it, yet the emotion behind it was clear: caution, curiosity, fear. I lowered my voice modulator and replied in the common tongue of Terra, the base language of the Imperium, knowing it would not reach them fully. Still, the intent was communicated. I come in peace, unless threatened. A sudden vibration in the air alerted me to another presence. From the shadows between the buildings, figures emerged. Faster than human reaction, they moved with precision. My instinct screamed danger, yet these beings, clad in colorful garb, wielding strange devices and emitting radiant energy, did not attack. Instead, they approached slowly, cautious but deliberate. These were heroes, I realized, not warriors of the Imperium nonetheless. Still, the situation demanded demonstration of competence. I raised my bolter, cycling around into the chamber, and made a controlled firing stance without shooting. Even the smallest gesture could serve as a deterrent. One of them mimicked my stance, raising a hand that radiated strange energy. I understood then. Communication would be through action as much as words. I scanned the horizon, noting disturbances in the psychic field, slight, almost imperceptible ripples in the ambient energy. Not warp, but something corrupting, foreign and invasive. My training warned me, wherever there is psychic turbulence, danger follows. Perhaps these heroes had already sensed it, perhaps they had not. Either way, this world had threads of peril I would not ignore. I moved forward slowly, each step measured, armor clanking against the concrete beneath me. The humans flinched, yet did not flee. They were testing me as I tested them, measuring my threat level. I spoke again, modulator slightly adjusted. I am a servant of the Emperor, a space marine of the Ultramarines. There is danger here, unseen, that may consume this world if left unchecked. Their leader, an imposing figure in red and gold, stepped forward, energy crackling around his fists. He did not strike. Instead, he tilted his head, considering my words, weighing trust against suspicion. In that moment, I understood. Alliances here would not be given lightly. Yet the signs of corruption I detected demanded urgency. We were not enemies, I decided, though the misunderstanding could erupt into bloodshed in seconds. The heroes must learn, as all must learn, that the 41st millennium is a realm where hesitation invites death. And yet, I had to temper this instinct. On this world, my authority carried no weight. Only action could prove my intent. A faint shadow flickered across a nearby wall, an almost imperceptible distortion in the air. My bolter hummed as I adjusted aim, every servo taut. This was no ordinary threat. The air vibrated with alien malice, a presage of the war to come. And in that instant, the first understanding crystallized. This world was not as it seemed. I extended a hand, not as a weapon, but as a gesture of alliance. We must move quickly. The corruption will not wait. My voice was low, modulated, carrying authority even if the humans did not fully comprehend it. One by one, they nodded, small motions of acceptance in the face of uncertainty. Thus began the first tentative alliance between a warrior of the Emperor and the defenders of this strange alien world, a bond forged not in trust, but in necessity. For somewhere beyond the skyline, unseen, the warp stirred, and what was to come would test the limits of both human heroism and the disciplined might of a space marine. Even in this foreign world, one truth remained universal. Vigilance is survival, and the battle is eternal. The heroes, this strange coalition of humans, mutants, and beings that defied categorization, led me through streets that seemed alive with motion. Even with the uncanny discipline instilled by my gene seed and the rigor of centuries of training, I was unprepared for the chaotic pulse of this world. Vehicles with no discernible propulsion shrieked past. Skyscrapers loomed like monolithic guardians. Holographic images flickered across surfaces, depicting events I could not parse. And yet, the human leader, the one who radiated red and gold energy, moved with certainty, as if this chaos were nothing more than a puzzle he could solve. I fell into formation behind him, bolter raised, scanning every shadow, every reflective surface for threats. My Auspex sensors hummed softly, detecting fluctuations in electromagnetic energy that were alien in origin. Unlike the carefully catalogued warp signatures of the Imperium, these emanations were erratic, unstable, but undeniably potent. A sense of unease settled in my chest plate. This world, this planet the humans called Earth, was not merely unaware of the cosmic horrors beyond the stars. It teetered on the edge of vulnerability. A group of civilians emerged from an alley, frightened and confused. Their eyes widened at my towering ceramite frame, my pauldrons brushing against the low-hanging neon signs. I lowered my weapon and spoke in measured tones, my voice amplified to project reassurance. Yet fear remained etched in their faces. Even here, far from the battlefields of Macragge, Armageddon, humanity's fragility was evident. I remembered my oath. The Emperor's protection extends even to those who do not yet understand it. The red and gold hero approached a panel embedded in a wall, fingers dancing across it with practiced precision. Strange lights pulsed in response. I observed, noting patterns, rhythms, and energy outputs. If this were a tactical interface, as I suspected, it was crude compared to Imperial cogitators, but functional. Knowledge, after all, was not limited to technology. Understanding intent was equally vital. Then the first attack came. From the shadows, creatures I could not identify emerged. Twisted forms, humanoid yet grotesque. Their skin glistened unnaturally, eyes glinting with malice. One moved faster than the human eye could track, claws slashing. I reacted without hesitation, bolter spitting fire in controlled bursts, precision engineered to neutralize threats without unnecessary collateral damage. A single round tore through a creature's chest, vaporizing it with a flash of energy. Another lunged at the human hero. I intercepted, sweeping it aside with the butt of my weapon, the impact sending it sprawling across the concrete. The humans, these heroes, did not recoil. Instead, they engaged with skill and coordination I had rarely seen outside elite Imperial units. One raised hands ablaze with golden energy, launching it in a directed blast that incinerated two more corrupted figures. Another moved with fluid grace, evading strikes, their weapon discharging bursts of light that struck true. I realized, even in this alien context, that competence transcended worlds. These were fighters molded by their own experiences, yet aligned with purpose. As we advanced, I could feel the corruption seeping into the environment. It was subtle at first, a distortion in the air, an unnatural chill, the scent of burning ozone mixed with something fouler. My Auspex sensors detected fluctuating energy readings, not quite warp, but tainted with a malevolent resonance. The creatures we fought seemed drawn to these pockets, as if the very planet itself was being manipulated. A pattern emerged. The attacks were not random. They were coordinated, intelligent, driven by a force both cunning and cruel. I spoke to the red and gold leader, my voice firm, modulated through the helmet. This is no ordinary threat. These beings are conduits for a corruption that will grow unless confronted directly. He nodded, understanding, though I could not gauge his full comprehension. Words were insufficient. Action would speak louder. The ensuing battle through the streets became a controlled, brutal ballet. I moved with precision, suppressing attacks, protecting allies, and eliminating threats. My armor was scratched, scorched in places, but held firm. The red and gold hero adapted, his movements weaving seamlessly with my own, the coordination uncanny for a first encounter. Another hero, whose body glimmered like living energy, created barriers to shield civilians, demonstrating an instinct for battlefield prioritization akin to veteran sergeants in my chapter. By the time the skirmish ended, the creatures lay destroyed or scattered back into the shadows. Civilians began to emerge, tentative, relieved yet still fearful. I lowered my bolter, scanning the horizon for additional threats. The psychic disturbances remained, subtle yet persistent, hinting at the greater menace to come. The red and gold hero turned to me, energy dimming slightly, and said in a tone of cautious respect, "You are not from here, yet you fight as if you belong. What are you?" I replied simply, "I am the Emperor's sword and shield. I fight the darkness wherever it rises, even on alien soil." This statement carried weight. The humans nodded, understanding the gravity, if not the full extent, of my declaration. As we regrouped, I took stock of the environment. There were signs I could not yet decipher: scorched streets, residual energy traces, and an oppressive tension that suggested more than mere chance. Something lurked beyond the visible, orchestrating these attacks, preparing for a larger assault. My mind raced, processing tactical options, formations, and potential contingencies. In every battlefield, the unseen enemy is often the deadliest. Still, there was a strange bond forming, forged in battle and mutual necessity. These humans, these heroes, had proven competence, courage, and adaptability. Not all would survive what was coming, but those who did would gain an understanding of war unlike any they had known, a war I had lived for centuries, yet still approached with the discipline and caution of a soldier sworn to protect. And so, amid neon light and alien architecture, an uneasy alliance was solidified. A space marine of the Emperor and Earth's defenders, united by circumstance, trust earned by blood, and the looming shadow of corruption that would not wait. The city's hum had returned to a semblance of normality, though I knew better. My auspex still detected faint surges of anomalous energy, subtle yet insistent, rippling like hidden currents beneath the surface. These readings were alien, unlike warp turbulence or xenopsychic patterns I had catalogued before. Something foreign had taken root on this planet, a corruption masquerading as reality. I observed the red and gold leader and his allies, noting their methods of tracking and scanning the area. They were effective, no doubt, yet untrained in recognizing psychic manipulations at a fundamental level. It fell to me to interpret the signals, to guide their response before the threat fully manifested. "Listen," I said, lowering my voice to a resonant murmur within my helmet. "There is a force operating beyond your perception. It is not merely creatures we face, but an intelligence that twists matter, energy, and mind. We must anticipate its moves, not merely react." The humans exchanged glances, a mixture of curiosity and concern. They had fought bravely, but they had yet to grasp the insidious scale of the danger. Even the strongest among them lacked the discipline to see beyond immediate threats. Our investigation led us to a district that seemed untouched by the initial skirmish, yet the air carried a subtle distortion. I noted patterns in the psychic field, zones where reality flickered unnaturally, where electromagnetic resonance deviated from expected norms. It was here that the corruption had embedded itself most deeply, seeding an anomaly that could, if left unchecked, erupt catastrophically. Suddenly, a low, guttural sound reverberated from the shadows. I spun, bolter raised, servos hissing in readiness. Out stepped figures that were humanoid in form, but grotesquely distorted. Their movements were erratic yet purposeful, coordinated yet chaotic. I recognized the hallmark of chaos influence, mutation not merely as physical transformation, but as psychic perversion. The creature's very presence distorted space subtly, an insidious creep that defied natural law. The red and gold hero responded instantly, fists glowing with concentrated energy, launching a strike that severed one creature mid-lunge. Another hero, tall and cloaked in shadowy energy, manipulated the environment, erecting barriers to shield civilians from collateral harm. I moved among them, a disciplined bulwark of ceramite and bolter, neutralizing threats with surgical precision. Each shot, each movement, calculated to eliminate the enemy while minimizing unintended destruction. My combat proficiency, honed over centuries, allowed me to operate as a single unit with beings whose abilities defy comprehension. Yet the conflict escalated beyond physical confrontation. One creature surged forward, its form flickering as though composed partially of unstable energy. My auspex detected an interference pattern, a psychic anchor that radiated power akin to a demon's presence, yet unmistakably alien. The air thickened, every breath a struggle, as if reality itself resisted our actions. I realized then that this was not mere a raid, it was a test, an assessment of our capabilities, orchestrated by an unseen mind. I barked tactical instructions, coordinating with the human heroes. Flank left, focus fire on energy nodes. They responded with remarkable agility, adapting rapidly to my commands, despite unfamiliar terminology. The red and gold hero positioned himself strategically, drawing attention away from civilians. The energy-wielding hero provided suppressive fire, while the shadowed figure disrupted the enemy's coordination with precise manipulations. I was impressed. Competence under fire mirrored that of the most disciplined Astra Militarum units, albeit in a wholly alien style. Still, the psychic distortions grew stronger. The ground trembled subtly, a resonance beneath our feet, echoing the corrupt influence. My auspex attempted to isolate the source, yet the readings conflicted, shifting rapidly, as if the corruption itself was sentient and aware of our interference. I considered warp incursion protocols from Imperial manuals. Stabilization was critical. Direct engagement often exacerbated the disturbance. Yet hesitation was equally fatal. This force would not wait for preparation. Then, in a moment of clarity, I discerned a focal point, a building at the heart of the district, warped and pulsating with unnatural energy. Its structure defied architectural logic, angles intersecting impossibly, windows glowing with a malevolent light. The creatures retreated toward it, as if drawn by instinct or command. I signaled the team. There, that structure is the anchor. We strike there and we disrupt its influence. Containment is imperative. The humans nodded, their resolve clear. Despite inexperience with forces beyond the mundane, they had adapted, trusting in guidance and their own instincts. I led the approach, bolter raised, servos tense, awareness attuned to every detail, the flicker of a shadow, the crackle of energy, the subtlest pulse of the psychic field. We moved as a unit, disciplined and precise, yet cognizant of the chaos surrounding us. As we neared the building, the air grew thick with malice. A creature burst from the entrance, a monstrous amalgam of flesh and energy, its form constantly shifting. I fired a controlled burst, obliterating part of its body, but it reformed almost instantly. This was no ordinary adversary. It was a conduit, a node of the corruption, and its presence confirmed the greater threat I had sensed from arrival. I barked tactical instructions, coordinating with the human heroes. Flank left, focus fire on energy nodes. They responded with uncanny synergy, combining their abilities in ways I could scarcely predict, yet their coordination mirrored disciplined military precision. We fought through the threshold together, aware that each step brought us closer to the heart of the anomaly and closer to the unknown danger that lurked within. The first stage of understanding was complete. The threat was intelligent, pervasive, and already entwined with the environment. Victory here required more than brute force. It required strategy, insight, and the unwavering discipline of warriors who faced impossible odds daily. And I would ensure that even in this alien world, the Emperor's will was manifest. Trust, once fragile, began to solidify as we pressed deeper into the warped district. I observed my allies closely, their movements, their reactions, their willingness to adapt. Unlike many human forces of the Imperium, untrained and untested, these individuals displayed instinctive comprehension of battlefield dynamics. The red and gold hero, who called himself Iron Sentinel, took point alongside me, his fists emanating a golden aura that disrupted the corruptive energy. Behind us, the shadowed figure, Nightshade, manipulated terrain and light, creating avenues for assault and protecting civilians from errant energy blasts. The energy wielder, Lumina, flanked the formation, launching precise, devastating attacks on emerging threats. Coordination was imperfect, yet impressively intuitive. I provided tactical guidance in real time, issuing commands and adjusting positions. Nightshade, intercept the left flank. Lumina, target the energy node at the building's apex. Iron Sentinel, maintain suppressive pressure. Servos hissed as I moved, bolter cycling methodically. Every shot accounted for trajectory, target density, and collateral risk. My combat experience spanned centuries, yet even here, in an alien environment, the principles remained: suppress, flank, eliminate, adapt. The humans followed, learning with astonishing rapidity. Our entry into the corrupted building was met with resistance unlike anything I had previously catalogued. Corridors shifted subtly, as if alive, walls flexing impossibly, staircases looping back upon themselves. My servo-enhanced perception struggled to map the architecture accurately, but instinct guided me. Each step carried calculated risk. I observed that the corruption affected not only matter, but perception. One could not trust sight or sound alone. Here, even the most capable human senses required augmentation by disciplined strategy and instinctive caution. From the shadows, corrupted forms emerged again, creatures that defied classification. I moved first, bolter spitting fire in controlled bursts, obliterating a creature mid-lunge with precision. Iron Sentinel followed with energy strikes, dismembering another foe with explosive force. Lumina's blasts tore through multiple targets simultaneously, while Nightshade's manipulation of shadows disrupted enemy coordination. In this confined environment, chaos reigned, yet discipline and strategy allowed us to maintain order. As we advanced, I noted psychic turbulence intensifying. The readings were chaotic, but not incomprehensible. A pattern emerged, a central locus of corruption anchoring the phenomenon. I approached with caution, understanding that direct engagement risked triggering an unpredictable psychic backlash. My training in the detection and neutralization of walk anomalies informed every step. The humans, unaware of the subtleties, relied on my guidance, demonstrating trust and adaptability. The focal point revealed itself as a chamber filled with a pulsating, alien energy. The floor vibrated subtly, and walls shimmered unnaturally. Within, a figure, tall, cloaked in dark energy, its features obscured, directed the flow of corruption. I recognized the signature immediately, not a demon in the Imperium sense, but an entity infused with similar corruptive principles, intelligent and malevolent. Its presence was a nexus, drawing energy from both the environment and nearby human activity. I assessed our options swiftly. Direct assault would be lethal. We required containment. "Team," I commanded, "coordinate strikes, disrupt the node, do not allow the entity to stabilize energy flow." The humans adjusted without hesitation, demonstrating an understanding of tactics and timing that spoke to innate heroism and adaptability. Iron Sentinel strikes disrupted energy patterns. Lumina's precision attacks destabilized local nodes, while Nightshade's manipulation of shadows contained the entity's movements, preventing spatial distortion from overwhelming the chamber. Even as the battle escalated, I noted moments of human courage that echoed the competence and discipline instilled in Imperial recruits. One civilian, caught in the vicinity, moved instinctively behind cover, returning fire with improvised energy devices. Though untrained, their bravery contributed to the containment effort. Such initiative reminded me that heroism was not limited to those of my chapter, but manifested wherever determination confronted danger. The corrupted entity retaliated with force, warping the chamber's architecture violently, hurling debris and energy tendrils. I intercepted with bolter and armored bulk, blocking attacks that could have dismembered lesser beings. Coordination became paramount. Any lapse risked catastrophic failure. Together, the human heroes and I formed an integrated unit, each action reinforcing the next. The battle was brutal, yet disciplined, a symphony of violence orchestrated under the principles of tactical superiority and survival instinct. And as we emerged from the chamber, I knew that the coming trials would test both human courage and Space Marine endurance to their utmost limits. The streets outside the corrupted building were eerily quiet, the chaos of moments ago replaced by an almost unnatural stillness. The human heroes and I regrouped, our breathing uneven, servos and energy shields humming softly. I scanned the area with my auspex, noting residual energy spikes and subtle psychic echoes that hinted at lingering corruption. The enemy had retreated, for now, but I knew that they would not stay dormant long. In the 41st millennium, an enemy that flees is merely regrouping to strike with greater ferocity. Iron Sentinel turned to me, his golden fists dimming as he studied the surrounding streets. "That building, it's not the source, is it?" he asked, his tone cautious but resolute. I shook my head slowly beneath my helmet. No, it was a node, a focal point, but not the origin. The corruption spreads like a virus, seeking weaknesses to exploit. Our task is to identify and eliminate them before they manifest fully. He nodded, absorbing the gravity of the situation. Even among Earth's defenders, the concept of pervasive, intelligent corruption was difficult to grasp, yet the truth was undeniable. Our patrol revealed small pockets of resistance, mutated humans and minor creatures, grotesque but manageable. These skirmishes were opportunities to assess the hero's abilities under pressure. I moved with calculated precision, my bolter discharging controlled bursts, eliminating threats with minimal collateral damage. Iron Sentinel and Lumina coordinated strikes, demonstrating adaptability and tactical intuition. Nightshade manipulated shadows to disorient attackers, creating openings for decisive blows. Each encounter was brief but intense, a test of skill, teamwork, and composure under fire. One particularly tenacious creature lunged from a side alley, its body flickering with unstable energy. I intercepted it with the butt of my bolter, sending it crashing into a wall. It recovered almost instantly, and I fired a single precision round to neutralize it. The heroes engaged simultaneously, their powers complementing mine seamlessly. It was an odd yet effective synergy, human ingenuity fused with space marine discipline. In the Imperium, I had rarely seen allies adapt this quickly to battlefield tactics outside of Codex-adherent units. The pattern was clear. The corruption favored chaos, exploiting weakness and sowing fear. Yet it had a preference for subtlety, testing our reactions, probing for vulnerabilities. I deduced that the minor foes we faced were reconnaissance units, assessing our strength, observing coordination, and reporting back to a higher intelligence. The warp did not act randomly, and while this was not the Imperium, the principle remained consistent. An intelligent force always probes before committing to full engagement. We pressed onward, navigating back streets and alleys with heightened awareness. Civilians fled at the sight of us, though some observed cautiously from behind barriers. Their reactions reminded me of Imperial citizen behavior during Hive City purges. Fear coupled with awe, a recognition of power they could not fully comprehend. I remained vigilant, understanding that collateral harm must be minimized. Even here, the principles of precision and restraint applied. A sudden flare of energy erupted down the street. I pivoted immediately, bolter raised, servos locking in readiness. The minor foes had coordinated an ambush, a classic tactic to test our response under confined conditions. Iron Sentinel reacted first, delivering a kinetic blast that shattered two attackers. Luminous focused beams cut through another, while Nightshade manipulated shadows to disorient attackers, creating openings for decisive blows. I moved as the anchor of the formation, intercepting attacks and maintaining momentum, ensuring no breach in our defensive line. Even as the battle unfolded, I noted the heroes' growing competence. They anticipated my actions, adjusted their positions proactively, and executed attacks with precision. This was no longer raw instinct, it was trained response, rapid adaptation to an unpredictable battlefield. For beings unaccustomed to my combat doctrine, their skill impressed me. They were learning, evolving under pressure, just as a novice squad of Imperial recruits would in their first engagement under experienced leadership. By the end of the skirmish, the minor foes lay neutralized or fled, their probing disrupted. The street was scarred with energy residue and fragments of the corrupted forms, a testament to the ferocity of our coordinated assault. The humans exhaled collectively, exhaustion evident but unbowed. I observed their demeanor carefully. Morale, focus, and discipline were intact, critical for the confrontations to come. I addressed the group, voice amplified and resonant within my helmet. This was only a reconnaissance effort. More will follow. We must anticipate larger forces, organized and coordinated. Preparation is essential. Iron Sentinel nodded, and Lumina adjusted her stance, energy crackling with renewed determination. Nightshade melted into shadows, scanning for residual anomalies. Even in this alien world, the principles of vigilance, preparation, and tactical superiority proved universal. The minor foes had been a demonstration of competence, a controlled test of skill, and a harbinger of the trials to come. They had also reinforced a critical truth. Coordination between our disparate abilities, Space Marine discipline, and Earth's unique powers was not optional, but necessary for survival. As we advanced, I knew that the next encounter would escalate in both intensity and stakes, demanding even greater mastery, courage, and unity. The streets had fallen into a deceptive calm. Even the wind seemed hesitant, carrying whispers of the unnatural stillness that followed the initial skirmishes. My auspex thrummed quietly, its sensors picking up minor psychic ripples that, while subtle, indicated a looming disturbance. Unlike the familiar warp signatures of the Imperium, these readings were erratic and alien, suggesting the presence of a foreign psychic anomaly operating under deliberate concealment. My instincts, honed over centuries of warfare, told me that the calm was temporary and dangerously misleading. Iron Sentinel gestured toward a high-rise, its upper floors pulsating with an unnatural, fluctuating glow. "I've been tracking energy readings here," he said, voice steady yet tinged with concern. "They're growing, and I don't know what's causing it." I studied the pattern, noting the irregular fluctuations in resonance and psychic interference. "This is more than mere energy," I said. "It is a localized psychic disturbance, subtle yet potent. Its source is intelligent, probing, and dangerous. We must approach with extreme caution." We moved as a unit, the human heroes and I maintaining formation as we navigated the warped urban landscape. My bolter was primed, servos humming softly, and every sense attuned to even the slightest anomaly. Lumina hovered at the flanks, scanning for energy signatures, while Nightshade melded into the shadows, detecting shifts in environmental perception. Iron Sentinel led with decisive, purposeful steps, shielding civilians where possible and suppressing minor threats along our path. Suddenly, a tremor ran through the street beneath our feet, subtle but persistent. My auspex picked up the fluctuations in electromagnetic fields and psychic tension, indicating a growing nexus of instability. The ground beneath us quivered, as if the planet itself were reacting to the presence of the anomaly. My instinct sharpened. This was no ordinary threat. It bore the hallmarks of a warp-adjacent disturbance, intelligent, invasive, and corruptive. The creatures we faced previously were but precursors, sent to test our capabilities and sow fear. From the shadows, warped forms emerged once more, yet this time their movements were markedly different. They were erratic but coordinated, using the environment to their advantage, striking with both speed and precision. I reacted instantly, Bolter discharging controlled bursts that vaporized one before it could reach Iron Sentinel. The others moved in unison, their powers complementing my own disciplined attacks. Lumina unleashed beams of concentrated energy that disintegrated multiple foes, while Nightshade twisted shadows to disorient and trap enemies. The battle escalated quickly, and I noted the subtle signs of psychic manipulation affecting the environment. Streetlights flickered unnaturally, concrete walls warped slightly under unseen pressures, and the very air seemed to thrum with malevolent energy. These were not random effects. They were indicators of an intelligent force probing our capabilities, testing our reactions, and seeking weaknesses. I recognized this pattern immediately, a methodical reconnaissance prior to a major assault. We pressed forward with heightened vigilance, every movement deliberate, every action calculated to minimize risk while maximizing effectiveness. I barked commands through my helmet comms, synchronizing the group's responses. Flank left, contain the corridor. Lumina, focus on destabilizing energy patterns. Iron Sentinel, maintain suppressive pressure. The humans adapted instantly, adjusting to my guidance and integrating their abilities seamlessly into our tactical formation. At the upper floors of the high-rise, we encountered the epicenter of the psychic disturbance, a shimmering, distorted chamber filled with an alien light that defied comprehension. Within, the corrupted entity revealed itself, more complex and powerful than the minor foes we had previously encountered. Its form was partially intangible, fluctuating between matter and energy, as if drawn from multiple dimensions. Its psychic presence pressed upon our minds, subtle yet insistent, probing for fear, doubt, and hesitation. I assessed the situation quickly. Direct confrontation would be perilous. Containment and disruption were paramount. I instructed the heroes to coordinate their attacks strategically, targeting the energy nodes sustaining the entity's form, while I engaged directly to neutralize physical threats. Iron Sentinel's fists of golden energy struck first, disrupting localized energy flows. Lumina's precision beams targeted critical nodes, destabilizing the entity's coherence. Nightshade manipulated shadows and perceptions, preventing the entity from anticipating our strikes effectively. The battle escalated quickly, and testing endurance, skill, and coordination. Every action required exacting precision. A single misstep could amplify the corruption or allow the entity to escape. Yet the human heroes had begun to grasp the principles of disciplined combat, responding to my guidance with an understanding that mirrored well-trained Imperial squads. They were learning, evolving, and proving themselves capable allies against a force that exceeded even their expectations. By the time the confrontation reached a temporary stasis, the psychic anomaly had been weakened, but not eliminated. Its influence lingered, a constant reminder that the threat was far from neutralized. I addressed the team, voice calm but resolved. This disturbance is only the beginning. The entity will adapt, and further manifestations are inevitable. We must remain vigilant, prepared for escalation. The humans nodded, their resolve firm despite exhaustion and uncertainty. Even in this alien world, the principles of war, discipline, adaptability, coordination, and preparedness remained universal. The anomalies, while foreign, were not unconquerable. Together, we could confront them. But as I observed the lingering distortion in the high-rise and the subtle tremors in the streets, I knew that this world's trials were only beginning, and that the challenges ahead would demand every ounce of skill, courage, and strategy at our disposal. The aftermath of the psychic disturbance left the streets eerily silent, yet the air itself felt heavy, thick with the residue of corrupted energy. Even without visible threats, I could sense the tendrils of chaos, or whatever malign force was operating here, reaching outward, probing for vulnerabilities. My auspex hummed quietly, its sensors detecting faint but persistent distortions, subtle fractures in the local electromagnetic and psychic fields. They were growing stronger, spreading insidiously, and I knew we had little time before the corruption gained foothold beyond the immediate district. Iron Sentinel surveyed the area with cautious eyes. "This is worse than I imagined," he admitted, voice tinged with gravity. "The creatures we faced, they were only symptoms." I inclined my head beneath the helmet. Correct. Their presence is a manifestation of a deeper, more pervasive corruption. It infects matter, energy, and perhaps even minds. The anomaly we engaged earlier was but a node, a localized expression of a wider, intelligent influence. It is adapting, testing our responses, and will escalate if left unchecked. We moved with renewed caution, scanning every building, alleyway, and shadowed corner. Minor disturbances flickered in and out of perception, subtle visual distortions, electrical surges, and occasional screams that bent the normal patterns of sound. It was clear that the corruption was targeting both the physical and psychological domains, exploiting fear, uncertainty, and human instinct to destabilize defenses. My training told me that containment must occur swiftly before a larger manifestation overwhelmed the city. From the shadows emerged more corrupted figures, humanoid but grotesquely mutated, their features flickering between familiar and alien forms. I reacted instantly, bolter spitting controlled bursts of ammunition, precision engineered to neutralize threats efficiently. Iron Sentinel followed, his kinetic strikes dismembering the nearest foes with force that defied human limits. Luminous beams tore through multiple enemies, while Nightshade manipulated shadows to block their advance and create tactical openings. Each movement, each attack was a lesson in synchronized combat. As we pressed onward, I noted the hallmarks of deeper corruption. Certain buildings emitted low-frequency vibrations that subtly warped perception. Electrical systems flickered with erratic surges, and even natural sounds seemed distorted. The entity's influence was pervasive, its reach extending beyond the immediate battlefield. My auspex detected nodes, energy concentrations that acted as anchors, amplifying the corruptive force across the surrounding cityscape. Destroying these nodes would disrupt the entity's network, but locating and neutralizing them would require strategic precision and coordination with the human allies. We reached a plaza where the corruption manifested most violently. Shadows twisted unnaturally, buildings flexed in impossible geometries, and the ground pulsed with energy. A wave of psychic pressure pressed against my mind, subtle but unmistakable, probing for doubt and fear. I adjusted my mental focus, invoking disciplines taught over centuries to resist the warp's insidious touch. The human heroes faltered briefly, caught off guard by the distortion, but quickly regained composure. They had begun to internalize the principles of battle under abnormal conditions, responding with increasing competence. A sudden surge of energy erupted from a central node, a shimmering spire of twisted energy tethered to surrounding buildings. It pulsed rhythmically, like a heartbeat, and I recognized the pattern immediately. This was the corruption's nexus on Earth, a focus point that channeled and amplified the malign influence. I gestured to the team, voice firm through the comms. That spire is the source. Concentrate fire to destabilize it. Precision and coordination are vital. Any misstep could strengthen the entity rather than weaken it. The ensuing assault was a test of unity and skill. I moved as the anchor, intercepting creatures attempting to protect the node while maintaining suppressive fire. Iron Sentinel's kinetic strikes disrupted the energy flows. Lumina's games targeted structural weaknesses, and Nightshade manipulated the battlefield, preventing the enemy from regaining cohesion. The synergy between my disciplined combat methods and the hero's unique abilities created a force greater than the sum of its parts. As the node destabilized, the psychic pressure intensified momentarily, almost as if the entity itself was aware of the attack. Shadows writhed, distorted sounds pierced perception, and the very air seemed to resist our progress. Yet our coordinated assault held. Finally, with a concentrated effort, the node collapsed in a controlled implosion of light and energy, neutralizing the immediate threat. Breathing through the filtered systems of my helmet, I assessed the aftermath. The corruption had been partially disrupted, but its tendrils remained. This world is resilient and its heroes capable, yet the enemy's reach was vast and adaptive. I turned to the team, voice resolute. The node is down, but the influence persists. This corruption is intelligent. It will return, adapt, and seek other anchors. We must remain vigilant and anticipate further incursions. Even as the human heroes nodded, understanding the gravity of the situation, I knew that the confrontation had fundamentally altered them. They had faced not merely physical threats, but a pervasive corruption that challenged perception, mind, and reality itself. And I knew, as we regrouped, that our alliance would be tested again, harder, deeper, and with stakes that could engulf the entire city if we faltered.
The city had settled into a tenuous calm, yet the psychic residue of the corrupted nodes lingered, whispering of dangers that had not yet revealed themselves. I moved deliberately through the streets, servos soft but alert, scanning the urban landscape for additional anomalies. The human heroes followed closely, their energy and vigilance undiminished despite exhaustion. In moments like this, I observed, leadership and training revealed itself, not just through direct orders, but through awareness, adaptability, and the discipline to act decisively under pressure. I paused at an intersection, analyzing the surrounding structures. Energy readings fluctuated sporadically, suggesting residual pockets of corruption, likely the result of the entity's influence spreading like a parasite. I gestured to the team. We must prepare for escalation. The nodes we destroyed were tests. There will be more, and likely stronger. Iron Sentinel's fists glowed faintly, an unconscious indicator of readiness. Then we train, he said simply, his tone steady. We coordinate. We don't wait for them to strike first. I inclined my head. The principle mirrored that of any imperial doctrine. Preparation is survival. We established a temporary vantage point atop a reinforced building, surveying the surrounding cityscape. From this height, the magnitude of the corruption became clear. Small distortions flickered across rooftops, occasional flashes of twisted energy revealing minor incursions. I instructed Lumina and Nightshade to map the area, identifying weak points in the environment and potential future node locations. The data we collected would allow us to anticipate enemy movements, a fundamental advantage in any battle. I took the opportunity to instruct the heroes in Imperial-style tactical methodology. The enemy is intelligent, adaptable, and will exploit our weaknesses, I explained. You must act as a cohesive unit. Positioning, focus, and timing are critical. Always anticipate their moves rather than react blindly. The group absorbed the guidance quickly. I observed Iron Sentinel adjusting his approach, coordinating attacks more strategically. Lumina calibrating her energy output for precision. Nightshade manipulating shadows not merely reactively, but proactively to control engagement zones. Even in an alien context, competence emerged from practice and insight. Our preparations were interrupted by a sudden surge of psychic energy, subtle yet unmistakable. The atmosphere around the plaza distorted, shimmering unnaturally. My Auspex sensors flared, identifying multiple energy concentrations coalescing into a larger pattern. They're moving, I said, voice firm. Another node is forming. We must engage immediately. The humans tightened their formations instinctively, demonstrating that their learning under fire had not been wasted. Coordination now felt almost instinctual, a synchronization of purpose forged in prior battles. As we approached the newly forming node, minor corrupted figures emerged, testing our responses. I reacted immediately, engaging them with precision, each shot calculated to neutralize threats efficiently. Iron Sentinel delivered kinetic strikes that disrupted enemy formations. Luminous beams tore through the advancing creatures, and Nightshade manipulated the battlefield to funnel foes into controlled kill zones. Even civilians were shielded, reflecting a tactical awareness that spoke to both human instinct and learned strategy. Reaching the node revealed its complexity, a swirling mass of distorted energy tethered to surrounding infrastructure, pulsing rhythmically as if feeding from the city itself. Its formation was faster, more coherent than previous nodes, indicating that the entity was learning from our prior interventions. I assessed the structure quickly, calculating potential points of disruption while simultaneously coordinating the team's attacks. Timing and focus were critical. A misstep could allow the node to stabilize fully, strengthening the corruption rather than weakening it. The assault was swift and calculated. I moved to intercept physical manifestations of the corruption, Bolter discharging precise bursts. Iron Sentinel targeted energy tendrils, disrupting stabilization. Luminous precision attacks weakened core nodes, and Nightshade manipulated perception, disorienting the entity and providing us with critical tactical advantage. Even as the node fought to maintain coherence, our combined effort destabilized it significantly, forcing it into retreat or partial dissolution. As the dust settled, I assessed the outcomes. The node was neutralized for now, yet its adaptive growth signaled that further, larger threats would inevitably follow. I addressed the team, voice firm but measured. We are learning. They are learning. Each encounter strengthens both sides. We must anticipate the next strike and prepare accordingly. Victory is temporary, and only preparation ensures survival. The human heroes nodded, resolve hardened by experience and understanding, ready to face the next escalation in a conflict that would push us all beyond our limits.
The night deepened, the city now a labyrinth of shadow and flickering light. I stood upon the skeletal remains of a high-rise rooftop, surveying the urban expanse below. From this vantage, the scars of corruption were visible as faint distortions, shimmering across the skyline. Each one represented a breach point, an anchor of alien malevolence threading itself into the fabric of this world. The humans called it energy distortion. I knew better. It was the warp, wearing a new face. Iron Sentinel landed beside me, the servos of his armor whirring softly. "They're increasing," he said, his voice grim. "Energy readings all across the city. Whatever this thing is, it's adapting." I glanced at him through my visor. As all adversaries do, it learns our patterns, just as we learn its. The difference is that it adapts without restraint, without humanity. Below, Lumina and Nightshade coordinated ground patrols, their movements fluid and efficient. Lumina's radiance cast eerie reflections across the shattered streets, while Nightshade's presence bent light itself, masking her movements from observation. Together, they formed an effective pair, a balance of illumination and concealment. It reminded me of old Imperial doctrines, light and shadow, blade and shield. Suddenly, my auspex flared to life, registering a surge of warp-like activity on the city's outskirts. The reading was far beyond the previous nodes, larger, more concentrated, and actively drawing from ambient energy. I analyzed the pattern quickly and realized with growing certainty what it was attempting. Manifestation, not mere influence, but incarnation, a physical projection of its will into reality. "This is no longer containment," I said through the comlink, voice resonant with iron certainty. "It's invasion." We mobilized instantly. The team advanced across the city, moving through broken avenues and abandoned districts where humanity had fled in panic. I led from the front, auspex scanning constantly for anomalies, Bolter ready. The environment itself grew unstable as we neared the epicenter. Walls twisted subtly, reflections lagged behind movement, and the very air pulsed like a living organ. Even Iron Sentinel, armored and unyielding, hesitated briefly as the distortion clawed at perception. When the ground split open ahead, it revealed not mere destruction, but emergence. From the fissure rose something vast and grotesque, an amalgam of machinery, organic tissue, and ethereal energy. Its form was inconsistent, a shifting fusion of steel and sinew, its face an ever-changing swirl of light and void. I had seen its like before, in demon-forged constructs, birthed from the unholy union of matter and the warp. "Target the conduits," I ordered. "Disrupt the energy flow before it stabilizes." Iron Sentinel moved first, unleashing a blast of kinetic energy that struck one of the glowing tendrils feeding the creature's mass. Lumina followed, her energy beam slicing through another conduit with surgical precision. Nightshade darted through the chaos, creating distortions of her own to misdirect the creature's attention. I advanced through falling debris, bolter roaring. Each shell detonated with precision, tearing through exposed sections of the abomination's structure. The creature screamed, not through sound, but through vibration, an echo that resonated within our very minds. It struck back with tendrils of energy and flesh, each movement warping space itself. My armor systems flared with warnings, but I pressed on, my training overriding instinct. I had faced horrors from the warp itself, entities that broke sanity with their very presence. This was no different, merely new. The battle dragged on, every strike calculated, every movement deliberate. When the creature began to falter, collapsing under our coordinated assault, I sensed it transmitting, sending data, psychic impressions, or perhaps something deeper across the void. It was not dying, it was calling. "We're out of time," I said flatly. This was only the herald. The creature convulsed, imploding in a burst of incandescent light that rippled across the skyline. The shockwave shattered windows for miles, the air itself screaming in protest. As silence returned, the distortion vanished, but the psychic residue it left behind was unmistakable. It had succeeded in marking this world. Somewhere, something was watching. Iron Sentinel exhaled heavily, his voice low through the comms. What now? I turned toward the distant horizon, where faint glimmers of unstable energy still pulsed beyond the city. Now, I said, we prepare for war. This world has been noticed. The humans exchanged glances, the weight of my words settling upon them. They had fought bravely, effectively, but this was only the prelude. The entity's true strength had yet to be revealed, and when it came, it would not come quietly. I had seen empires fall to less. Yet within me, the warrior's flame burned bright. These humans, these strange defenders of a realm untouched by the Imperium, had proven their worth. With discipline, unity, and faith in their cause, even mortals could defy the darkness. And I, a son of the Emperor, would see to it that they did. The rift split open with the sound of tearing reality. Not thunder, not explosion, but something deeper, a rupture that clawed at the soul. The air itself seemed to scream as shapes poured through, twisting silhouettes that shifted between flesh, shadow, and machinery. They were abominations of logic and form, impossible geometries made flesh. My armor's systems flooded with warning runes, Auspex readings spiking into incomprehensible values. I switched to manual focus, ignoring the sensory overload. "Form a perimeter," I barked. "Anchor your fire lines. Do not let them gain momentum." Iron Sentinel surged forward first, his gauntlets blazing with kinetic energy. Each strike sent shock waves that shattered the ground, tearing through the nearest of the creatures. Lumina took position above, radiance bursting from her palms in focused beams of plasma, cutting through the hordes like lances of sunlight through storm clouds. Nightshade weaved through the chaos, her shadows distorting perception, buying precious seconds of confusion before striking unseen. And I, the Emperor's instrument, advanced into the maelstrom. Bolter fire thundered, each shell finding its mark. Explosions tore through the first wave, reducing amorphous horrors to fragments of smoke and ash. The stench of corruption filled the air, acrid and thick. I moved with mechanical precision, centuries of battle guiding every motion. Pivot, aim, fire, reload, advance. The human heroes fought with valor, their movements growing sharper, their timing more precise. They were no longer a loose coalition of defenders. They were soldiers, bound by necessity and trust. But the rift continued to swell. I could feel the warp bleeding through, reality struggling to hold itself together. Ghostly whispers brushed against my consciousness, old and familiar. The seductive murmur of chaos, promising understanding, power, dominion. I silenced it with prayer, invoking the litany of purity under my breath. My faith burned brighter than any corruption. I am the shield of humanity, the Emperor's wrath made manifest. A creature lunged at me, a mass of tendrils and metal shards, its mouth a spiral of teeth. I met it head-on, driving my chainsword through its center. The blade screamed as it bit into the impossible flesh, blood of liquid light splattering across my armor. The creature convulsed once, then collapsed into vapor. Above, Iron Sentinel grunted through his comms. "We're holding, for now." "Then hold," I replied. "Reinforcement will not come. We are the wall." Luminous energy output began to waver, her systems overheating from sustained fire. "We can't keep this up forever," she shouted. "You need not," I said. "You need only endure." I threw a frag grenade into a cluster of advancing entities. The explosion briefly halted their advance. But even as they fell, new ones emerged, larger, more defined, their forms stabilizing as they adapted to this reality. One towered above the rest, its body a grotesque fusion of bone and circuitry, its head a cluster of glowing lenses that fixed upon me. Its psychic presence hit like a tidal wave. For an instant, my vision fractured into overlapping layers of reality, futures, memories, and nightmares merging into one unbearable vision. I dropped to one knee, systems flickering as the creature's mind clawed at my own. I saw endless wars, burning galaxies, humanity extinguished in infinite ways. And yet, underneath it all, I saw something else. A pattern. A weakness. I rose. "Your corruption is born of imitation," I said aloud. "You mimic life, but understand nothing of it. You know power, but not purpose. That is your flaw." The creature roared, reality shuddering around us, but I did not falter. I switched my bolter to incendiary rounds and advanced. Every step was deliberate, every shot a prayer. Iron Sentinel flanked from the side, blasting through the creature's legs, while Lumina focused her beams into its exposed core. Nightshade weaved through the chaos, her shadows distorting perception, buying precious seconds of confusion before striking unseen. When the creature faltered, I leaped, driving my chainsword into its chest. Sparks and blood erupted as I roared the Emperor's name. For mankind! The monster collapsed, its psychic scream reverberating across the battlefield, before fading into nothingness. Silence followed, heavy, unnatural. The rift pulsed weakly now, as though stunned by the death of its vanguard. We regrouped amid the wreckage, the air still shimmering with residual energy. My armor's diagnostics scrolled across my visor. Damage extensive, power reserves reduced to 47%. Still functional, always functional. Iron Sentinel approached, his metallic armor dented and scorched. Was that the worst of it? I said. No, that was its probe. The true entity waits beyond the veil. It watches, it learns. Lumina knelt, exhaustion visible even through her luminous form. Then what do we do when it comes through again? I looked toward the rift, now contracting slightly, its surface rippling like dark water. We ensure it fears what it finds here. The city was broken, but the people were not. Humanity endured. It always did. Yet deep within the rift, I could still sense motion. The whisper had grown quieter, but not gone. Hours passed before the world grew quiet again. The rift, now a smoldering wound in the sky, pulsed intermittently like a dying heart. The corruption had stopped spreading for now, but I could feel it. The stillness was deceptive. This was not victory, it was an intermission between storms. Iron Sentinel was the first to break the silence. Whatever that was, it nearly tore the city apart. I've run diagnostics through every system. We were seconds from catastrophic failure. His tone carried the exhaustion of a man who had seen too much, yet still refused to rest. I nodded, surveying the horizon. You fought well, all of you. My voice carried the weight of 1,000 campaigns, and perhaps for the first time I meant the words as praise rather than protocol. But the enemy is not vanquished. This was a fragment, a feeler from beyond. Nightshade stepped forward, her eyes narrow. Then we hit back, find the source, close the rift, whatever it takes. Her resolve reminded me of the Sisters of Battle, unyielding, born from belief rather than training. If only it were so simple, I said. This breach was not opened from your side alone. Something here, your science, your energies, has weakened the boundaries between dimensions. That corruption seized the opportunity. Lumina frowned. Our energy grids, our teleportation systems, they're quantum-based, multidimensional. You're saying we built the door? "Unwittingly," I replied, "but the enemy cares little for intent. It sees only the path." Iron Sentinel slammed his armored fist into a nearby wall, cracking the reinforced alloy. "Then we destroy the path, shut down everything connected to that grid." Lumina hesitated. "If we do that, half the planet goes dark. Communications, defense networks, life support, all gone." A silence fell between them. The weight of consequence hung heavy in the air. These humans, for all their power, still bore the burden of mercy. It was their greatest strength and their most dangerous flaw. I turned toward the flickering remains of the rift, watching as faint energy tendrils still coiled outward, searching. "If you do nothing, your world will not survive the next breach. The warp is relentless. It does not stop. It adapts, and once it establishes a stable conduit, this universe will drown in madness." Lumina clenched her fists, light surging faintly from beneath her palms. "There has to be another way." "There is, but it demands sacrifice." Their eyes turned to me. Humans always flinched at that word. To the Imperium, sacrifice was as natural as breathing. To them, it was tragedy. "I will enter the rift. At its core lies a nexus, a mind guiding the corruption. I can find it and destroy it from within. But the gateway must be closed behind me. Permanently." Nightshade shook her head. "You're insane, all of you." Yet even she began prepping the containment systems. Iron Sentinel initiated the power redirection sequence, diverting the city's last reserves toward the rift chamber. The air vibrated with raw energy, the ground trembling under the strain. I moved to the center of the nexus, the Emperor's sigil glowing faintly on my pauldron. My armor's internal systems flared, sanctifying the metal with battle prayers and holy incantations. I drew my chainsword and bolter once more, their machine spirits eager and restless. "You came to our world by chance, but you fought for it like it was your own," Iron Sentinel said, his voice steady despite the chaos around him. I looked at him through my visor. "Every world where mankind draws breath is mine to defend." The chamber filled with light. The rift began to expand again, resisting containment. The humans worked with frantic precision, their technology straining against something that should not exist. I could feel the warp pushing back, desperate, furious. I stepped into the light. Reality distorted, colors bled together, and for a moment I was everywhere and nowhere. I saw stars dying, galaxies burning, endless war, and beyond it all, a dark intelligence watching from the void. Then I spoke the final prayer. "The Emperor protects," and I vanished. The rift exploded inward, collapsing upon itself. The light consumed everything, then faded into silence. When the dust settled, the humans stood amidst ruin and stillness. The rift was gone. The sky was whole. Nightshade broke the silence. "He's gone." Iron Sentinel lowered his head. "No, he's where he was meant to be." Lumina looked up at the sunrise breaking through the clouds, golden light cutting across the wreckage. then maybe that's what faith looks like. Far beyond the veil, in the eternal storms of the warp, a single figure strode through darkness, bolter in hand, and eyes burning with divine fury. The Emperor's angel had found a new battlefield. The rift was sealed, but the memory of it lingered, etched into the very bones of the city and the hearts of those who survived. In the aftermath, humanity rebuilt, not out of certainty, but out of defiance. The world had glimpsed something vast and terrible, a truth far greater than gods or heroes. And yet they endured. They always did. Iron Sentinel led the reconstruction efforts, his armor dented, his systems scarred. But in his every order there echoed the precision and discipline of another world, echoes of the warrior who had fought beside him. Lumina spearheaded the containment protocols, ensuring the rift would never reopen. Yet every time she saw a spark of energy, she remembered that flash of gold and crimson disappearing into the light. Nightshade left soon after. Some said she went underground, others whispered she followed the faint psychic echoes that still haunted the planet's magnetic field. Perhaps she hoped to find him again, or to make peace with what they had unleashed. The Space Marine never returned, yet in the far reaches of the void, stories began to circulate. A phantom warrior seen fighting horrors beyond comprehension. A lone figure in ceramite armor walking through storms that devoured worlds. To some, he was a myth. To others, a warning. But to those who truly understood, he was proof that the Emperor's light burns across all realities, that duty, sacrifice, and faith are universal. And so, in this new age of heroes and gods, one truth remained. The Grimdark of the 41st millennium had touched another world, and it would never be the same again. Because where mankind stands against the dark, even in other universes, the Emperor protects.